Hello. Can everyone hear me? I'm clear? Okay, cool. So good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, the organizer, for organizing this very beautiful workshop and having me here for a talk. I have been enjoying it so far and learning a lot. So my name is Thinh, and I'm a third-year graduate student at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And for my talk today, I will talk about the effect of using different model for molecular hydrogen shelf shooting and whether this affect our prediction on galaxy evolution in high redshift. So first of all, just to get the motivation, so in the past, when you include molecular hydrogen in simulation, you need to care about H2 radiative transfer, which means you need to care about Lyman-Werner radiation and how it photodissociate H2 in your simulation. The more standard or more accurate way to do it is using ray tracing, but ray tracing is rather computationally expensive because you have to trace a lot of rays. So in the past, people came up with different approximation model to help reduce the computational cost while hoping to mimic the effect of mimic the same result as the ray tracing. However, there has not been any detailed study or comparison between using ray tracing and the approximation model, especially in large cosmological scale. Most of the comparison are done in local or idealized scale. So this project is trying to address this gap in our knowledge. Okay, so so here's a little diagram to explain what shelf shooting is, in case some people are not familiar. So I have here just a little molecular cloud. And then this molecular cloud is exposed to young massive star around it, and these stars emit what's called Lyman-Werner radiation. It's basically a UV radiation corresponding to an energy range between 11.2 to 13.6 eV. And when molecular hydrogen absorbs Lyman-Werner radiation, it becomes excited, and there's actually a 15% chance that it doesn't go back to the ground state, but it will be dissociated into atomic hydrogen. And absorption of Lyman-Werner radiation is one of the main mechanisms of how H2 gets dissociated in space. But of course, H2 doesn't give up here. It needs to find a way to counteract with this effect, and that is called shelf shooting. So what shelf shooting is that when you have a high column density or you have a big cloud, the outer layer of the cloud will absorb the Lyman-Werner radiation and then get dissociated into atomic hydrogen and a bunch of excited H2 or H plus electron. And this way is help the H2 inside the cloud to still exist without being dissociated. Another aspect of this is that the H plus or H2 plus are at the outer layer of the cloud can recombine again to become H2, and thus this provide more shielding or prevent Lyman-Werner to enter deeper into the cloud. And the H2 inside the cloud can still cool, and the star can still form deep inside the molecular cloud. Okay, so that's the concept. How do we model this in simulation? So I'm using ENSO, which is a grid base. So here these little diagrams show in the grid cells. So let's say we're interested in calculating the photodissociation rate of H2 in this gap cell, and let's say it is the center of the cloud. In the ray tracing model, which is implemented by John Weiss and Tom Abel in 2011, in ENSO, we trace the ray from every active star in the simulation box. And when it's passed through the cells in between, this star in the target cell, we attenuate the Lyman-Werner radiation a little bit, and then we attenuate bit by bit when it's passed through the cells, and then as the target cell, we just sum up all the contribution of all the rays to get the photodissociation rate. However, as you can see, this can be computationally expensive if we have a lot of stars in the simulation, or if our cells are refined, then we have to trace a lot, and then we have to perform a lot of calculation when the rays pass through different cells. So in 29 paper by Nikolai Nedin proposed an approximation method called Sobolev-like approximation. So instead of tracing or attenuating the ray through every single cell, they define what's called characteristic length, and they assume that the attenuation is only relevant inside this characteristic length. Outside of it, it's optically thin. You can perform optically thin, so just inverse square law, and then you perform attenuation. And the attenuation is quantified by what's called a shelf-shielding factor. This characteristic length is calculated by the gas density over the gas density gradient. So let's say, imagine if you deep inside the molecular cloud, like the center cell has a high gas density and low gas density gradient. That means the characteristic length is large. So it's kind of mimic the effect of, like instead of tracing throughout all the cell toward the center, now you have the characteristic length that can cover the whole cloud. So that's the idea. Okay, and during my investigation in this, I also noticed that Enzo, the source code of Enzo has a bug. I actually had 2 bugs. They forgot a factor of 2 in the characteristic length, like in their source code, and another factor of 2 when calculating the shelf-shielding factor. So I have to like correct. I submit a pull request and correct it. But by this point, I didn't know whether the correction will affect the result. So I have to rerun the simulation again with the corrected model. So I ended up with like 4 simulations to compare. I have the one that used ray tracing, the one that used the corrected approximation model, and we also by accident, I have 2 that use the old implementation. But we have now 4 to compare. And here are the fact of the simulation. So all these 4 have the same parameter file. The only thing difference between them is how we implement the H2 radius transfer. In terms of redshift, the approximation model run down to a redshift of 10.9. The ray tracing is much more, it takes longer time, so we only ran it down to a redshift of 12 so far. And the spatial resolution is 0.7 parsec, which is refined enough to model the molecular cloud. Okay, so let's go to the result. So in this 2 plot, I plot the photo dissociation rate using the ray tracing, and in comparison with the one calculated by the approximation model. Each of these points represent a gas cell in the simulation. On the right subplot, I shows the ratio between the approximated over the ray trace photo dissociation rates as a function of gas mass. And you can see 2 regimes of the, or like the accuracy of the approximation depends on the gas density. So at low gas density, the approximation seems to overestimate the photo dissociation rate when compared to the ray tracing, which means that H2 in low gas density region is more likely to be dissociated. On the other hand, at high gas density, the approximation underpredict the photo dissociation rate, so H2 is more shielded, and later, I will show the result later, but you see more H2 in the high gas density region in the approximation model. Okay, this is a bit worrisome. So the next question is, how does it affect the halo and the galaxy? And to do that, we need a halo finder. So I took a bit of a detour to advertise the new halo finder of my research group. Is developed mainly by my advisor, Kurt Barrow. It's called HiPACC, and this halo finder uses a combination of methods, but it includes particle tracking, and it solves the orbital energy of dark matter particle, and it's defined halo by bounded particle. So it's much more robust than rockstar, a consistent tree, and in this paper, we show that HiPACC tracks subhalo for a longer time compared to rockstar. So in your project, if you have problem with tracking subhalo, please check this paper out. Okay, so back to my project. So after finding all the halo, I plotted here the gas mass as a function of halo mass. On the left side, on the right side is the H2 mass as a function of halo mass for all the halos in the simulation. So in terms of gas mass, the simulation matches quite well within each other, so nice and clean. But when you look into the H2, the ray tracing one is the orange one. The corrected version is the yellow, and the other two is the blue one. You can see the accuracy is now split into two regimes again. In small halo mass, the halos in the ray trace simulation have more H2 because, as I said earlier, is protect H2 better in the low density region and lower halo mass. The gas in there have lower density. When it's come to higher halo mass, the gas gets denser, so the approximation starts to overshield the H2, and therefore is kind of overshield the H2 and overpredict the H2 abundance in high halo mass. And because H2 is directly relevant to star formation, the next question is how does it impact star formation? So in our simulation, the star formation density threshold is between 10 to negative 19 and 10 to negative 21 between the redshift of 18 to 20. And in this redshift range, the approximation model matches relatively okay, kind of more or less okay, with the ray tracing. So therefore, we don't see a big difference in terms of stellar mass as severe as like the H2 mass, but we still see some differences. So this plot in the middle here shows the number of halo with star as a function of time. And we see, first of all, the ray tracing one have more halo with star. And these differences come mainly at this halo mass bin between 10 to the 8 to 10 to the 9 solar mass. And we believe that because the ray trace in low halo masses protect more H2, so stars are easier to form in the ray tracing. In other words, the use of the approximation model seems to affect the star formation in dwarf galaxy or small halo mass. Okay, so here's a video showing the halo, one of the halo between the approximation and the ray tracing. The top plot shows the gas protection plot. Second is H2 protection plot, temperature plot, and stellar mass. So for the gas, you see the two matches okay. But for H2, we start to see in the approximation model at the center, we see big clump because, as I said, in high gas density approximation overshield the H2, so the galaxy is more clumpy in terms of H2. It has more H2 clump compared to the ray tracing model. And this clump, in turn, reduces the temperature at the core. And I will show it later. It's also help form more star at the center of the galaxy. So I have 7, this is a small box, so I have 7 halos that I can cross-match and compare between the two models. And we see that this is in different radial bin. So from 0 to 1 is within the galaxy, and from 1 to 5 is a CGM. This plot shows the H2 fraction. So in the approximation, you see the galaxy have much more H2 to 3 to the 5 order of magnitude in the inner part of the galaxy. This in turn reduces the temperature by a factor of 2, and then it's formed also more stellar mass in the center. Whereas out in the CGM, the approximation have lower amount of H2, have a harder CGM, and compared to the ray tracing, it has fewer stars in the outer layer, in the outer part of the galaxy too. This is a visualization to show it better, where you see the ray tracing, the galaxy are more extended. So in other words, the approximation seems to make the galaxy more compact. Last but not least, I also zoom out and look at the IGM. So in terms of the IGM, because IGM has low gas density, in the approximation we have a lower amount of H2 in the IGM compared to the ray tracing. And we also look at the reionization prediction. And for the ray tracing, the prediction of the reionization seems to start quicker. And this is probably because the ray tracing, the stellar distribution are more extended. So the ionizing radiation is easier to get out of the IGM and reionize the universe faster. So that's my conclusion. the use of approximation model does affect
All right, thank you. Rachel, do you want to come and start plugging in? And maybe while Rachel's setting up, we can take one question. I guess while Rachel's plugging in, my quick question was, so part of the justification for the approximations like Naden et al. Was that you only really care about shielding in two regimes. Basically, you only care when the value is very small or basically 1, right, of the shielding factor. And it doesn't matter if you get it wrong when it's very small as long as it's still very small. I'm just saying that was sort of the argument in their paper about why you could get away with this. But it seems like your plots about sort of incident radiation don't show that. Do you disagree with that, I guess? Yeah, just naively, I'm curious. It seems like it doesn't, but